are at Lake Charles, just off Greg's Parkway. We're here with Dave Brown, Village Engineer, Public Works Director. As he's getting ready to retire, we're doing some little sniglets and snippets and talking about some of these stories going on in town. And so thanks for taking the time. So.
Absolutely. I think the one we're doing today is about our watershed, and I guess we're right outside of Lake Charles right now. So we'll get started on Lake Charles. So essentially, Lake Charles was an old quarry as part of the Cuneo property, and they ended up putting in sheet piling and then rerouted the CV ditch, which starts the headwater is downtown Mundelein, a little bit upstream of McDonald's, and it's the CV ditch it's called. So that
And can I back up the CV ditch, because it wasn't like a creek or a stream. It was something that some farmers around here, they dug it out to make the water go in a channel and stay out of their field.
they actually do. Our archives show a 1902 or 1904 photo of a big like steam shovel and some workers working on creating the CV ditch. And so the CV ditch basically was excavated because this was all farmland. And so to make their crops grow, they wanted to dry out the area. And so they created a ditch. The ditch goes all the way from, like I said, downtown Mundelein, extends all the way south of our golf course, connects into the Indian Creek, which extends over towards the Des Plaines River and then south from there. But I guess in terms of specifics here, we have an old map also that we'd like to share and show that shows Lake Charles is man-made, as we just talked about, but downstream of that in the park system is Big and Little Bear Lake. Big and Little Bear Lake are also man-made. That was merely a swampier wetland type area. When the mall was built in the early 70s, they needed it for detention. So it was excavated. It's a nice recreational area that everyone enjoys, and that's how it was created, was really for detention purposes.
Well, to think about it, the whole water system that we look at as being so beautiful and natural, it was all like, hard work and ingenuity of a bunch of people before us to make it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. When you really look back at old maps in the history of Vernon Hills, it was really agricultural industry. So there was a lot of farmers' fields, and a lot of people talk about trees and development of Vernon Hills, but I think really the story is there are a lot more trees now than there ever were. There was a lot more corn back then, but we have more trees. In terms of the development of the area, the planners and the village board, one thing they did a very good job about that isn't spoken enough is the green belt that we created through town. This area we're in, Big and Little Bear Lake, through the golf course, and that protects these areas. And so in this area, there are also coyote dens that I've seen also. And so, there's habitat, and that's a good thing for us.
And when we talk about Lake Charles and the CV and all these places, yeah, they were man-made, and starting back at the turn of the 1900s. I mean, so some of these things need some work over time, and those are some projects that the village puts money and time into to make sure they stay and do the job that they need, not only just to be beautiful, but to keep the water where it should be.
Yeah, these areas need to be managed. We have some great partners also. My hat's off to Mike Adams and Lake County Lakes Management Group. We partner with them. They go out and do studies of our different lake systems. They do that throughout the county. We're very blessed that they provide that service to us, and it gives us a roadmap. The first one that I viewed for Lake Charles, other than the one that the developer shared, was in 2000. Lake County shared information and they gave us some objectives and what should we do? Well, one of the first things to figure out is the lake itself. So a limnological study is done and they figure out the depth of the lake. This lake, everyone looks at it and it's beautiful, and we all would like it to look like Lake Michigan, but it isn't Lake Michigan. It's under 4 feet deep by average. Lake Charles is. 2019 study showed 3.84 feet of depth. And so it is very difficult. And one of the big challenges that we have is there's a large sediment load that comes downstream, and then you have a very narrow ditch. It hits into a big water body, and so all of the sediment that is suspended in the water slows down, and it deposits it. So the deposit is at the delta, much like the Mississippi, and so it's forming here. So we had the 2000 study, we did another study around 2012, and then in looking at that, 2019, we hired Burke Engineering, and Burke Engineering looked at the lake and said, these are some options for us to do. When we had that document, we were able to go to all of our partners in the area within the watershed, and more importantly, the Stormwater Management Commission that oversees all of us. And so we shared this document, and we just said, we need to do some improvements to Lake Charles. We were blessed. They ended up getting some DECO grants. They're looking to have other phases on it, so all the money hasn't been obligated just yet. But the village is kicking in $250,000, the park district another $150,000 as part of our match. We're anticipating what that means is, including engineering design and construction, we'd be in the $2.75 million range to do some improvements. So what does that money buy for us? Some people would like, we need to dredge the lake. Well, dredging is very expensive. The Burke study showed, I think it was $11.3 million for us to dredge the lake. So I don't know where that money would come from. So, one of the things that is on the plan, and we'll share that plan with the audience, but the delta that is forming is something that's really important. More manageable would be to just address the delta area, that's probably more in 2019 dollars, 1.2 million estimate. I'm sure it's up to 1.5 or more now. But that is one of our priorities to look at. The irrigation system for beautiful Greg's Parkway, Huntington, that is drawn out of the lake. We have a replenishing at the golf course, a deep well over 1,000 feet deep, goes into the St. Peter's watershed or aquifer, I guess, and it replenishes the lake. But they pull water out of this, and their intake ends up being clogged because of the sediment. So that's one thing that's very important. In terms of grant money, the grants really doesn't pay for dredging, but for an operation like this, that is something that affects water quality, et cetera, so it is eligible. And we're not just looking at the village's improvements, but the park district is contributing. They're looking at Big and Little Bear Lake and looking to improve those also.
And when we talk about improvements, it's like stabilizing the edges so they don't cave in onto and all the things to keep the water body able to have water in it and not dirt and junk and everything else.
Yeah, to keep it beautiful the way that we would love it to be. And let's say we had the $11.3 million. If we spent that and we didn't take time to look upstream of where the sediment is coming and address those areas, we would really struggle. So one of the other areas that we're looking at is from the north end of Lake Charles going all the way up to Hazeltine. That's probably just under a half mile. And so we're looking to restore that area. That's within the village's control. So that is a second priority for the village as part of this grant.
When you say restore, that means like stabilize, restore. So it isn't just for beauty, but it's for functionality and to continue to do the job it's got to do for us.
Absolutely. And the Shadow Creek homeowners in that area, they have some struggles that they have very large but weedier trees, and they're declining, they're falling over the creek, potentially problems with them falling into a townhome. And so the HOA has talked to us too about this is important to them. So we made sure to make that a priority.
Well, and at some point you've been also in talks at different points with Mundelein even, because some of this is it's out of the village, but again, partners that we all work together.
Yeah, really proud of our partners in both Libertyville and Mundelein. The old Washburn guitar site, Mundelein has spent a lot of effort to improve some of the flooding that they received a few years back. And so that is a step in the right direction for them. They acquired the property. They put in a large detention facility. They're looking to improve that and have it as a beautiful park for their residents and others to enjoy. Libertyville, Charles Brown Park, right adjacent to our park systems too. They have made drastic improvements. Their improvements before their improvements, Charles Brown Park during August, stagnant water. There was a quilt of algae on top of it. We'd finally get some rain, and then it would turn on the pumps, and you would have a sludge of high nutrient material that would head towards Lake Charles. They knew about it. They're good people. They were looking to get grant monies too, because things are very expensive, and they worked hard, and they were able to obtain the money and the funding to get this done, and they improved their park. And I see a lot of people enjoying their park too. So yeah, we have some great partners in our watershed.
It takes partnership, and it's more than just beauty, because otherwise we'd revert back to being that swamp that it was in 1900, and we got too many people living here for a swamp right now. So,
Absolutely.
but that's a lot of information. I know there's people can look back at the history of it all, but very interesting that so many people, so many years along, have put this work into it to make not only the beauty but the functionality that we have, and it's now our turn as our generation to keep that up, to keep up the good work. So,
I appreciate it.
thank you.